Hi guys, my name is Jason Oaks. I'll be your primary professor for this class, and I just want to thank you for joining me. I just wanted to introduce myself a little bit. Um, I have my undergraduate degree, a bachelor's in church ministry with an emphasis on preaching from Hope International University that I received back in 2002, and I received my Master of Divinity from Bethel Seminary San Diego back in 2006. So that is right. I was in your very seat just a few years back, and I'm very honored to have the privilege of working with you guys here. But more importantly, in regards to why they asked me to teach this class in regards to working with the cults, it's been a primary focus in my life ever since I was in high school. My best friend growing up was part of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as was his family. And it was at a time that I was just getting committed to my Christian faith. And um, I was going to youth group at the time, and my small group leader, he gave me a video called The God Makers. And I went home watching it thinking I'm just going to learn a little bit about what my friend believes and how to relate to him and understand him. And about 5 minutes into the film, my jaw had hit the floor, and I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. I knew that I needed to talk to my friend, and what I found was very defensive, um, very well. We don't really believe that kind of stuff. A lot of denial, a lot of defensiveness, and my tactic was basically when he said, we don't actually believe that, I would go with him and we would find somebody else that I knew was LDS, and we would ask them, does your church believe this? And they would say yes, and they would start talking about it. And over time, and enough times of that happening, enough of the embarrassing doctrines that my friend just wasn't even aware of. He ended up being a little bit confused because he found himself saying, I don't believe that. But it wasn't until one day. And actually, this was after several different conversations and one particular confrontation in which he got really mad at me. And I knew I was risking my friendship if I took it beyond this point, but I knew that God wanted me to. But we were talking, and in a very defensive way, all of a sudden the revelation came out, and what he said was, it doesn't matter whether I believe any of this or not. I was baptized as an LDS, and so I am on their records, and I will always be LDS, and there's nothing I can ever do about that. And that's just an example to help you understand the hold that some of these groups have on these individuals. Um, Even when they don't believe, they feel like they will never ever escape this group. And that was his case. And once we hit that point, that was a huge milestone because we were able to talk about that. I was able to help him understand that that's not true, that he could actually leave the church. And in fact, he could embrace what he was coming to understand and believe about Jesus, the real biblical Jesus. And so he started coming to Christian Club with me, and it was just baby steps. And eventually he did give his life over to the biblical Jesus. And when he went off to college, he got involved with a uh, solid Christian group, and things have taken off from there. He still my best friend, and he was the best man at my wedding. And so from there, after he came out of the church, I was drawn in. I was didn't become a member or anything like that, but I just, in my mind and in my heart, I just had curiosity and interest, and what grew into a strong heart for these people. And now I had a friend who could tell me where all the Mormon bookstores were in town, and so we would get equipped and get resources. And then anytime I see a missionary, even to this day, I'm the one who stops my car, goes out on foot, and tracks them down, introduces myself, and wants to start the conversation. I've been friends with several LDS people who I was able to challenge them to read the Bible while I read their scriptures, and they would go to church with me if I go to church with them, and then we'd talk about it, kind of thing. And then, as I went into the ministry and went through the ranks of, youth pastor, associate pastor, college pastor, interim pastor, senior pastor, I kept on studying these things. I kept on meeting with Mormon missionaries. And in 2012, the Lord put on my heart that He wanted to do something more with this. And that's when I went through a church planning assessment to basically with the thought that I'm going to go out to Utah and plant a church that would plant churches. And what ended up happening, I got the go-ahead, but as we went out to Utah, something I had never done before then, what I found was I resonated more with the missionaries there than the pastors. And we decided to move out there January 2013 as missionaries. And we moved out to a town called Manti, Utah, which has a population of about 3,000 people, 90% LDS, and 0.5% Christian. And so my family literally doubled, I think, the size of the Christians' population in Manti at the time. Manti is actually where they have the Mormon Miracle Pageant every year at the temple there. A town of 3,000, but there's this huge temple. It's actually one of the first that was built in Utah. And they hold this play that every year that thousands upon thousands of people come to. And they reenact the history of the church and the history of the Book of Mormon. And so it's a huge evangelistic thing. That's where I lived. And so we lived there for about a year and a half before God called me back to California temporarily and then onto where I am now. Currently, I'm senior pastor of Emmanuel Baptist Church in Roundup, Montana. And very thankful that the Lord has me there. But also in 2012, even earlier, before we went out to Utah, I just started offering to churches within my region that I was a part of as a pastor there to come and equip their congregations to reach out to the LDS. And I was having a conversation with John Lillis, who was the dean of Bethel Seminary at the time, about possibly just coming and doing a special equipping seminar that one of their events they reach out to the community. And we did lunch, and all of a sudden the conversation shifted to, well, what if maybe there's a possibility of doing a class with us and doing something online. And then I met with Dr. Motz, who's now the dean, or at least the acting dean of Bethel Seminary. And he happened to be the head of the department at the time that I needed to interact with. And we both felt like this is something that the Lord has for us to do. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Now, what you may have heard in that is that most of my experience is with LDS, and that is absolutely true, unapologetically true. I have had interactions with Jehovah's Witnesses, and I've studied them. I've studied these various different groups. But what you're going to find in this class is, rather than me pretending like I'm an expert in all of these different groups, is I'm enlisting the help of some of my friends that have various ministries that I've connected with over the years, and they've given me full permission to use their materials. And so you're going to hear several voices as you listen to the recordings for the class sessions. And I think that's a better situation for you guys anyway. But anyway, Some of the voices you're going to hear is Michael Bohm from Youth Apologetics Training. He has a podcast. He lives in Colorado. He's a great guy. His podcast is all on different worldviews, and he interviews a lot of different great scholars. Highly recommend it. Nathan Young, who specializes in Jehovah's Witnesses. He lives over in Europe, and you're going to hear a lot of his stuff, particularly when it has to do with the New World Translation and the Trinity. And there's also a YouTube channel called Inspiring Philosophy, and he has a lot of great stuff on the Trinity. And there's also a show called Heart of the Matter that was done by a man named Sean McCraney, and it was the first live television call-in show comparing Christianity with Mormonism in Utah. And his shows, when he focuses in on Mormonism, he's a former Mormon himself, were really insightful. And once or twice, I'm going to borrow from him his material, mainly when he has guest speakers on his show, some things that were really insightful. Just as a side note, he went off on some tangents himself in terms of doctrine, and so I wouldn't recommend listening to more of his current broadcast that you can find on his website. But the past stuff that he did, dealing specifically with Mormonism, really great stuff. Anyway, that's me in a nutshell, and that's the class in a nutshell. I'm glad that you're with us. And any questions that you have of me personally or about any of the material that we cover, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. My email is joakes30@yahoo.com. And and you can get a hold of me that way. All right, talk to you later, guys.